Well, for more on the legal fallout from Maduro's capture and then the subsequent arraignment yesterday, let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Misty Marris. Misty, good morning. Okay, let's start with Maduro's attorney, because we had a bunch of conversations yesterday. One of the big ones being who could represent him? How will that work? How will business be able to be done with him? We had so many questions surrounding this. Now we know who this person is, but we don't exactly know how this came to be, how Maduro will pay for legal services since he can't use what is essentially illegal funds. Tell us what we know here.
So we don't know exactly where the funding for his private attorneys. He's not using court-appointed attorneys, so we did hire, and this will be $1 million defense, Savannah, without a doubt, working on this case. So we don't know where the money comes from, but this is an issue that happens in a lot of these cases where there's an allegation of ill-gotten gains. There's this narco-terrorism scheme that's been going on for 25 years, and there's money that has been gained from it. And what can happen is the prosecutors can actually challenge the source of the income that is paying for legal services, and the defense would be required to show that it's coming from a legitimate source. So there could be many different things. Somebody could be funding it. Sometimes it's an issue for the court to open up funds to pay for legal fees, so that could be something we see coming down the pike. But what we do know is that there's two private attorneys, not court-appointed attorneys, involved, so this could be an issue that we see play out in the courthouse.
Misty, during yesterday's hearing, the attorney said that he might file motions pertaining to Maduro's role as the leader of a sovereign government. That was something that we discussed yesterday. Of course, that is not how the United States recognizes Maduro, but how does that move here? How does that affect the case?
I think there will almost certainly be a motion based on immunity for a head of state. And that would be an issue that the defense would be looking to throw out this case before it ever gets further in the courtroom. They will say that because Maduro is recognized in Venezuela and diplomatically recognized as the president, that he cannot be criminally charged for anything that he does in the course of that role. Obviously, the United States has a different perspective. They say he has not been recognized as a legitimate leader since 2019. So that is going to be a critical issue and really a nuanced issue that's going to play out in the court. We don't know which way that's going to go. There is some legal precedent, so the prosecutors may have a bit of an upper hand, but this is something really to watch how that impacts the case moving forward. Or does it stop the case in its tracks?
Okay, so Misty, if we put a pin in that particular issue, this idea of being the leader of a sovereign nation, what else does a defense strategy look like here if you're his attorneys?
So if you're his attorneys, you're going to try and get this indictment tossed out on several legal grounds: violation of international law, violation of due process, and that sovereign immunity argument we just discussed, provided that this case makes it to trial, which is very likely that this case is going to survive those challenges, and then we're going to get into the courtroom. This is a trial. What's going to happen is the defense this is a conspiracy case, right? And we have Maduro as the kingpin. And in any case where you have this hierarchical organization, the biggest problem for prosecutors is tying that conduct, tying knowledge of conduct that he might not be directly engaged in to that person. So there's a lot of people usually in the middle who are doing the dirty work. So that's going to be where the defense will focus when this case gets into the courtroom and to trial.
Let's also, Misty, talk about the legal questions surrounding the U.S. attack in Venezuela that started this whole thing, that led to Maduro's capture. The Trump administration says it did not violate international law. Many global leaders say that Washington needs to justify its actions. There's questions, of course, even just from lawmakers here at home in Congress. Legally, what would justifying actions look like? What do they need to prove?
So this is basically, we're dealing with a lot of issues at the same time. We have the issues which are relating to how this impacts Maduro's criminal case. That's one piece. The other piece is whether or not the primary purpose of this operation was to bring Maduro, a fugitive who's been indicted in the United States, to justice by removing him and bringing him to the Southern District to face prosecution. That's falls underneath the powers of the President of the United States. There's legal precedent for that. Or was this a military operation? Was this something to create a regime change? Was this an act of war, which would require congressional input and would have implications in international law? So that threshold question is, what's the purpose of this operation at the time?
Misty Marris, as always, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.